Welcome to the Salty Investors episode number 51. It is Friday, October the 6th, 2023. What's going on, Tim?
Oh, not much. Just enjoying the weather. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty good down here. It's going to be a nice one again. A little bit dry, but, it's the El Nino or whatever else they tell us it is
Yep.
this time around.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we'll get on with that. So what do you got for us this week with the salt?
The ABC ran an article about a mother who was asked not to bring her kids into childcare as there's not enough staff. And so I decided to look up the pricing. It costs $140 a day to put a child in childcare. That's $700 for 5 days, which the taxpayers are subsidising a large percentage. A mother with 3 children in childcare 5 days a week would cost over $100,000 a year. Not much of this goes through to childcare workers, so it's hard to attract them. And taxpayers, how can they afford to keep subsidising this? I can't see how this is sustainable long term. Have you heard about this thing before? Like, they can't find enough childcare workers, and
this is the great debate, just because you have competing forces here. I mean, you have on the one hand people saying childcare workers don't get paid enough, and then, well, if you pay them more, it's going to cost more for childcare, which already costs a lot, as you've just outlined. I mean, and it's a self-reinforcing cycle. And at the end of the day, what's happening, because most childcare workers are women, and we're talking 95% plus, you're paying women low wages to look after other people's kids, so that women, because it's mostly women, can go back to work, presumably. And I always hear claims like, we lose $100 billion a year because women can't find affordable childcare, which means the opportunity cost of them actually working, they'd be contributing more to the economy. It's like, wait a minute, firstly, you're subsidizing the childcare, which is out of our pockets as well, and you're paying women low wages to look after these kids. And I'm always suspicious of this. Oh, we're missing out so much X amount. I suppose the economics is this, right? A childcare worker has a class of 10 or 12 kids, whereas the mother would be only looking after 1 or 2.
Yes.
So it's an economies of scale thing. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that it works out that much once you add in all the subsidies that we're paying.
Yep.
To get
run
people
all
into
the
childcare.
overhead and all the obviously, I worked it out, and like if you ran 10 children, just it's like a $300,000 year operation. So,
but 10 kids 5 days a week for $140 a day.
Yeah. So one person could run that, like you'd be doing, even if it costs you $100,000 to run it all, well, you're putting 200 in your pocket, like that's a fair bit of coin. But like a lot of that's obviously taken up in bureaucracy and all that stuff. It's not actually going to the childcare workers, so I don't know. It just seems like a bit of a lost cause to me.
Yeah, in 2013, remember, Julia Gillard put legislation in place that didn't come into about 2013 after she was out of office, which meant that, you had to have all these certifications and qualifications to work in childcare. You have to have at least one university qualified person working there, running the place. And then everybody else has to have done some kind of certificate that costs, that was back then, I think it costs like $3,000 or $4,000. It's probably $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000 now. So you just built in all these costs already, right? I mean, look, this is what happens. I mean, when I was a kid, when I went to preschool, I think preschool ends at like midday or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then my auntie looked after me for a couple of hours till my mother came and picked me up. And she gave me like a Vegemite sandwich, and there was some racing cars to play with. That was my childcare. It worked. It was all right. I just wonder what these wonderful benefits are. There's some research coming out now too that kids that are being put in childcare as opposed to being looked after by their own mothers have more anxiety.
Oh,
because
yeah.
like I don't know.
Separation.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sort of
yeah.
sense. Hmm.
I'm not one of these people who thinks women should stay home and look after their kids. I mean, it's up to you. I just don't like the fact that I'm being forced to subsidize your decisions to have kids and,
Hmm.
for you to go back to work. I mean, if you can't afford your kids, what are you having them for?
Yeah, well, it's
Remember, these
expensive too.
childcare subsidies go to households that have like $400,000 household income, and they still get the subsidies.
I know.
You know,
Yeah, I know. It's just another one of these things I look into and go, wow, there's a lot of money in a lot of these government subsidized programs. And I
yeah.
just, if the government has to pull back here from somewhere, like if debt gets out of control, no one buys their bonds, what are they going to cut back on? They can't lift taxes like when everyone else is hurting. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to cut services somewhere. And all these things seem like they're ripe to be,
Yeah.
cut back somehow.
Well, you can't. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, if you keep upping the subsidies, it's virtually going to be. You might as well just, make it a government institution.
Yeah.
Forget private. Just make it government childcare.
Yeah.
You might as well, because you will end up subsidizing that much of it. Yeah, I mean, like everything, it's just going to become more and more expensive, and less people will be able to afford it.
Yeah. But what are you salty
Anyway.
about this week?
Oh, well, topic du jour, the voice to parliament. So the latest polls on the voice to parliament showed that the decline in the yes vote has stopped. There was an essential poll that actually showed that yes had ticked up slightly, but it's still well short of securing the double majority that they need. Now, my gripe is that the answer from the yes campaign is that this is all Peter Dutton's fault and the misinformation from the Murdoch media. Now, this comes from the campaign that nearly has all of corporate Australia on side. It has all the sporting codes. It has 10 times the money. It has dozens and dozens of celebrities that it rolls out every single day. It has more volunteers. It has all these professional bodies coming out in support of it, the AMA and all these people. But it's not their fault. It's Dutton's and Murdoch's fault. I mean, I don't even pay attention to what Peter Dutton says on this thing, but they can't bring themselves to admit that maybe, just maybe, that the voice is a bit of a flawed concept. What do you think?
Yeah. I think they're trying to, if they win, they're not going to mention any of this. But if they lose, they'll be pointing to all this. They want to win both ways here,
Yeah, exactly.
They're just backing themselves. Yeah, if it goes back.
Yeah, if it gets up, it'll be like, oh, look, all these wonderful volunteers and the
Yeah.
people, they're endorsing the voice and the corporate. Oh, yeah, it's been great. If they lose, it'll be Murdoch media and Dutton. I mean, it's just so strange, because I don't know if the Yes campaign, if all these voters just get their information, if they're told what to do, because I couldn't even tell you what Pete Dutton said on The Voice. I have no idea. I just thought about it myself. Came to my own conclusion.
Yeah. I don't know. They just think, everyone on the opposite side are freaking idiots, and they just follow the misinformation. I'm reading a lot. There's an article just about every day on the ABC about misinformation, and experts are getting on and saying this is destroying democracy and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, what destroys democracy is when you control information and you. Democracy is fairly strong. It can handle misinformation. That's what's so good about it. We don't just flake over a little bit of disinformation. We're supposed to air it and point out the wrong things about it and put light on it. Not just, we're going to hide certain information and pretend it's not there. That's not the way to run a democracy. I don't know.
That's the great danger that the voice gets up, is that the voice gets shot down, is that then we'll get some, really nasty misinformation legislation where opinions will be banned because they're wrong think.
Yep. So, that's quite dangerous. Yeah.
Anyway, let's get on to a little bit of economic news. We have this week. So last week we had the retail sales numbers, which showed that, retail sales was flat, and given inflation, it's actually down. So this is the ABS's household spending survey. This came out on Thursday, and basically what I show here is just the breakdown between discretionary and non-discretionary. So just non-discretionary is obviously just essentials. And you can see, the further you go over here, see how discretionary, this is growth, percentage growth on this side. it's basically non-existent the last few months. So it's flat. Now, remember, discretionary growth is flat and this is to the year ending August, where inflation was about a little over 5% and we have 2% population growth. So discretionary is down at least 7%.
Yep.
And it's no surprise that discretionary retailers' stock prices haven't moved. And we're coming into that part of the year, probably late this month and early next month, where you'll get their AGMs of a lot of these companies. So it'll be interesting to see what they're saying about the outlook, see if it's got any worse. Because remember, with their results, they reported, most of them, they all did, reported that sales are down for the first 6 or 8 weeks of this financial year. But it'll be interesting to see if it's got worse, or whether it's the same, whether they see any sun on the horizon or anything like that. But discretionary's in a hole.
I'm in discretionary, so I'm seeing it now. I'm actually getting more sales because they're cutting back on advertising now. So then my ads actually showing more because I'm a cheapskate and I don't pay that much for them, and they're actually running more. So I'm actually doing all right. But that only happened in COVID and times like that when, or late last year, I noticed that I got an uptick. It's because when they start cut back ad spend, that's the first thing that goes. And at the car wash, about half the amount of cars are coming through. So it definitely is hitting. It just took longer than what I thought, like everything, it just takes a lot longer to throw through to the system. So
yeah, that's exactly right. We were too early, but it's starting to be felt now. I saw that there was an article I forget where it was. Maybe I sent it to you earlier in the week, showing that people on 6-figure incomes are ringing banks and things about financial distress, more and more phone calls. So it's hitting because it's not going away. I mean, nothing's got better. I mean, I guess you can say the price of food and things at the supermarket has stopped going up, but it's definitely not coming back down.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you've got real wages going backwards, it's just a decline in standards of living.
Yeah, and if you've got the RBA saying we're not going to do it, it's going to be like this for 12 months at least, you know, like, crikey, it's a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I just put some, because you said something to me during the week about gold, and you said that people had. Do you want to say what you said? You said people had woken up to the idea that bonds can actually give you 5% yield.
Yeah. It feels like
this barbarous relic gives you nothing.
Yeah, because I've been just looking at it, that and Bitcoin, just like holding it. Ever since the Feds lift rates, they've been doing great. They've just been treading water, and everyone's forgetting about these things have no yield on them. And now you look at it, that everyone's waking up. Risk-free rates and equity premiums and all this sort of stuff is all starting to come back into vogue. Like, why are you taking risk? Like, why are you gambling when you can just collect a coupon? Like, what are you doing? Surely everybody's been hit by a couple of names that have gone down 20 to 30% in the equity portfolio. And a bit of reality is coming. Like if I pick the next one and it does that again, what do I just collect 5%? So it just feels like that, bonds actually, and you got Ray Dalio coming out now saying cash isn't trash. I don't know if you've seen that. He was famous saying, cash is trash. Now he's saying it's not trash. Well, why? Well, you got bonds of 5% plus. Like, I'll probably be careful on the long end, like, the super long end. I think the 30 years and a bit of everyone's getting hammered on that because it just keeps, keeps chopping around. So, but on the front end, like, surely a couple of months, or 2 year, bill, like, crikey, how could you go wrong with that? Like, I don't know, what do you get 8% out of the equity market? If you're good. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, this was from Hussman, and he said, here that 30-year bonds have lost 50% of their value since their 2000 peak.
Wow.
with that, long-term bond yields, and when he says long-term here, he's referring to the 10-year on this chart,
Okay.
are now in a range that can be viewed as adequate, i.e. giving you an adequate return over the next 10 years or so. So, so that chart there basically says that once the blue line gets up to the red line, it's usually pretty good. Like it's a good time to buy some bonds, because if you think about, okay, if you think there's going to be no rate rises or rate cuts for the next 12 months, but if the longer term view, 2 to 3 year view, is that rates are going to come down, well then,
that's right. Grab a couple.
Bonds aren't not a bad investment. But in contrast, Tussman says, meanwhile, we estimate that equities will lag bonds by more in coming 10 to 12 years than at any point in history, aside from the period following the 2000 bubble peak. So that's, so just to remind people, what the stock market returned between, say, 2000 and 2009 was an awful period. But even, the stock market returned between 2000 and the peak. If you don't like that because it's a peak to a trough, just think about the peak to the peak of 2000 to the peak of 2007. I mean, the equity market barely moved. It was up slightly, and inflation adjusted, it was probably flat or down. So that's the kind of period you're talking about. Again, if history, decides
long
to
periods of time, but like crikey, who can look back, a couple of decades and go, oh yeah, we're going to go back to,
Yeah, I mean, well, it could be worse than that. It could be 66 to 82 again. It's like, like I think we've both said to each other that the bond market seems to have woken up to the new reality. The equity market hasn't. The equity market's still acting like it's 0% interest rates, and there's no other alternative.
And I don't think they're wrong. It's just we've got a period to go through to get to that again, I think. How long that is, we just don't know. But
or everything's permanently changed, and we're just stupid, and we will be sitting here in 20 years going, oh, wait for the pullback, wait for it. Oh dear. All right, well, let's move on to Croda.
Okay. Terry Smith and Simon Bernard just purchased Croda in the Smithson fund, which is a small and medium cap growth. So I thought I'd have a quick look. Croda is a specialty chemical company which is down 29% over the last year. Business segments are customer care, life sciences, and industrial chemicals. I think the customer care section is the best of the pick because it looks after cosmetics, skin care, and hair care. Customer care can be high value. So if they've got unique, great chemicals in this area, manufacturers are reluctant to switch. They're well regarded as they supplied lipids to the Pfizer jab. I can't see a strong note, but maybe the numbers say otherwise. We look at the shares outstanding, they're increasing at times. Employee count is not increasing above revenue growth, which is good. On a PE basis, they're fairly expensive. Price to fee cash flow, the cheapest they've been in a few years, which is what Terry and Simon will be looking at. Return on invested capital is low and choppy, but in the past it's generally been above average. Margins are generally good, but getting worse this year. Revenue growth and EPS are nothing special. A small dividend with a good payout ratio. They can definitely cover their debts with the interest coverage. We flip over to the balance sheet. We can see that, got a small amount of debt, but it's going in the right direction. It's easily covered by free cash flow. Free cash flow is exceptionally strong, even after the Pfizer sales have died down. So obviously, we've got some things going good for them, even after the acquisition. And if we flip over to the multiples, we can see that it's cheap on a operational free cash flow multiple, but the others are nothing special.
Yeah.
It's a fairly nice company. I'm sure it can hold, but I'm not sure it can hold off the Chinese competitors. If you're a skincare or hair care product manufacturer and you're under inflation pressure to not increase prices, substituting ingredients is definitely an option. And the
Mm.
quality of the Chinese products are fairly similar. I'm a bit
Right.
worried for them. Those who successfully can substitute do not have to raise prices and therefore can gain some market share. On the
Mm.
other side, they've nearly paid off the acquisition costs, so the metrics would definitely improve from here. The problem for me is I can't see a moat. What do you sort of think?
Right. So is that why all the metrics seem worse in the
Yes.
latest year? So like all the returns on assets and equity. So what they issued a bunch of stock for this acquisition, did they? And that's why the returns are down.
Yeah, it looks like in 2019 they, 2019. Oh, yeah. So 2020 they've interested a whole heap, jumped up a whole heap, and the metrics sort of went haywire. Yeah, but they've just taken out a heap of debt, but they're paying it down. If you look on the balance sheet, you can see that like they're really hooking into it. Like, and I think that's what Simon and Terry must be looking at. Like because it's only down to 300 million now. It was 800 last year. Or the 2021.
Yep.
So they're definitely doing the right thing here. For conservative balance sheet, because interest rates are going to be higher for longer. Like
Yep.
so, if you're paying down your debt, you're going to look ugly because you're not like buying back shares and doing all that nice stuff for investors, but you're supposed to buy when it's ugly. So I think that's what Terry and Simon are doing, buying a bit of a shit sandwich here, and
Mm.
they can probably see it coming out. But I just look at these chemical companies, and I'm just using Terry's words, they're highly commoditized, even though they've got specialized chemicals that
Yep.
do specialized things. The Chinese can just catch up. Like, it's just hard for me to look out 5 years and go, oh yeah, they'll be able to fend off the
Right.
Chinese from here.
Yep.
You
Yep.
imagine if you're
Yep.
a chemical company, you'd be emailed by the Chinese all the time saying, hey, we've got this. It's very similar to what you do. Hey, it's like 30% cheaper. Would you like to
Yep.
try some? Like,
Yeah.
you'd be just
Yeah.
bombarded and you'd be under cost pressure all the time, So,
Yep.
but you look at these metrics, this revenue growth, it's been good for the last 3 years, but that's COVID. That's all that
Right.
Pfizer stuff in there. And then
Is
you
it?
look at the
Yeah. So I mean, when we
EPS.
say chemicals, what are we talking about? We're talking about chemicals that go into shampoo,
Yep,
to sunscreen, to
yep.
all.
Yeah, so
Um,
so they're not just generic type chemicals. They're a little bit like extra engineering gone into them, so they do
Yep.
specialized things. Because you put something on your skin, yeah, it's got to be emulsified, meaning oils and water mixed together, but then it's got to have
Yep.
other characteristics as well, so that they can be brandable. It's just they're not customer facing, so those brands, over time, are not as
Yep.
resilient.
Yep. So you're
So
selling your stuff to Palmolive
yep,
or whatever. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so like you see, Pfizer, they're selling to Pfizer, they're selling to a whole heap of cosmetic companies, but you don't really own the brand value there. You do own it a little bit because you've had you've got a good product that's proven to work, and they're reluctant to change.
Yeah.
They don't want to change something in the formulation, and the customer goes, "Hey, the product's not as good as it used to be. I'll switch to somebody else." They
Mm.
don't want to risk that, but obviously these guys' costs are going to be a lot higher compared to some Chinese company, and it's just a matter of quality. Can the Chinese get their quality up? And I think they can. That's what I'm betting on. I'm betting over
Mm.
the next 5 years that the Chinese will continue to improve. Again,
So,
I'm partly
so
racist
what's
because I'm comparing to Japan. So, you know, so yeah, yeah. So I
so
don't
we
know.
don't know. We don't. Terry hasn't spoken about this publicly, so we don't know what he sees. I mean, is it simple that it's been sold off because COVID's largely over, and maybe it's been sold off too much? I mean, maybe that's the rationale.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
Terry would never do that. He doesn't buy things that are
Mm.
cheap. That's going against. He's not like an idiot like me. Oh, buy the dip.
Yeah.
Oh, 29% down. Buy
Yeah.
this. Yeah, it's already hit the bottom. It's going to go like, yeah, he buys quality. And this has got quality. Like, I'm not denying, look at this return on invested capital. It's got 20s there occasionally if you go back a few years.
Yeah. I'm just interested as to why all the latest current metrics are all way lower than what they have been recently. Like, look at your return on invested capital is at 6. Your return on equity is at 8. What's happened in this year? What's happened?
Oh, I think it's just the COVID thing. Like Pfizer were taking up a heap
really?
of it. Yeah. So that's all come off now. And, you got all this.
Right.
So, yeah, I think. But now is the time, like, you're supposed to buy it when it's looking ugly. And maybe Terry's doing a little bit of that, or Simon. I've been emailing him going, hey, boys, I think I know some better stocks than you guys. Just haven't heard back.
I wonder why.
Just let me know what what you're looking for, and I just can't see. I know these guys are from this part of the world, so maybe they know the management and they know, what's it looking like going forward. So maybe they've got a bit of an inside track here. That's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, it doesn't look brilliant to me because Terry likes, a good EPS. He bought McDonald's. And I was, why the hell did he buy McDonald's? It's got low growth, but the EPS number is going insane. It's because they can just funnel all into buybacks and, number goes down,
Right. Yep.
And he's liking that into recession, and who wants to start a restaurant chain in a recession? So I can understand what Terry's doing there, but here I just can't pick what they're doing. I'm missing information here, obviously. I can't.
Yeah.
They've got some inside track here that I can't see.
Well, I mean, if this turns out to be good investment, you'll find out about it because he'll talk about it. And if he doesn't, it'll just get sold and we'll forget about it. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go, people. This week's, Terry Smith's into it. Have a look. Tell us what you think. And we will see you next time.